Well, let me ask you this because, again, I've heard this concept that the universe is infinite. And if it's not infinite, what the hell's on the edge?
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Um, there's nothing in space-time, nothing that is infinite. Every measure within space-time of our universe is finite.
Mhm.
Our universe began a finite time ago, not an infinite time ago, a finite time ago.
Mhm.
We also know, looking at analysis of hydrogen, that about 9 billion years ago, our universe had a huge sort of push of stellar formation, which uses hydrogen. And that has progressively fallen off. So our universe has very, very little hydrogen left to make more stars. But the biggest one of the other thing is that from the very early epoch of our universe, when it became transparent to light and atoms could form, it basically it began to there was a radiance throughout space. As space has expanded ever since, that radiance has moved into the micro, it's been stretched into microwave wavelengths. And it's now called the cosmic microwave background. When that was analyzed, tiny little temperature differences that were analyzed only a few years ago. And first of all, they were found to embed the patterns that I was referring to earlier, these patterns that are all scales of existence and across numerous fields of research. We call them fractals.
Mhm.
But those temperature differences were seen to be fractals, but also they were only a finite wavelengths. They fill all of space. So there's nothing in space and nothing in the cosmic microwave background that is not finite, okay? We also now know from this framing of a cosmic hologram that it is itself finite. It's a holographic boundary that is a boundary of a conscious but finite universe. And the final piece of sort of, if you like, potential evidence is that our universe began in its hottest state, its Planck scale temperature, and its lowest informational content, or what I call entropy. And ever since, as space has expanded and time's flowed, the temperatures dropped and the entropies increased. Now, we're now at a temperature of only 2.7 degrees above absolute zero, whereas it started at a temperature of 10 to the 32 degrees Kelvin,
Mhm.
trillions and trillions of times hotter than the center of our sun. So we're right down at the sort of the final, pushes, as it were, where
Mhm.
the entropy, the informational content's still expanding, but the temperature will fall, and it can't fall below absolute zero. So that again suggests a finite ending. Now, what's then beyond it? Infinity, eternity.
Right.
This
So
is where we get back to the Vedic sages.
right, and because science can go so far,
Yes,
and until we finally
exactly.
we until you run into a wall, meaning
Yes,
like, okay, so the big breath, got it, the big bang, if you want to call it that, fine, whatever. What was there prior? Where did it come
exactly.
from? How did it was
Exactly.
it, and this is where you have to kind of go into the spiritual, have to
Yes.
kind of dig into the Vedic and into
Yes.
these ancient ideas that are far beyond what we can comprehend yet. And we're still trying to figure out things that they've been saying for thousands of years, and they're discovering new things in archaeology and all this. Let's not even get into ancient civilizations, because that could be a whole other lovely conversation we
Whole
could
other
have,
subject.
a whole other subject. But it is fascinating that we are, I mean, by the way, that was a beautiful explanation, by the way. I've learned immense amount of stuff in this conversation. But let me ask you something, because I've heard this term thrown around. I'd love to hear what you think of it. What is sacred geometry, and how does that affect, the role of how the universe is structured?
Well, there is a teaching, there's a curriculum of teaching called the quadrivium, and that means fourfold. And it comes back to this ancient universal wisdom teachings perspective that everything in what we call reality is essentially number. with the cosmic hologram and the understanding that, we've just touched on today, those numbers, those basic numbers are ones and zeros of digitized information, with me being obsessed by the hyphen, meaningful information. And they are the pixelation of our universal reality at the Planck scale. And they then accumulate to form, literally, to form the appearance of quantized energy matter and entropic space-time. But from those zeros and ones, we can express numbers. We can express numbers, for example, in a Fibonacci series of 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. And we find the Fibonacci series and many, many other numerical relationships form the patterning at all scales of existence. But the quadrivium, founded on this cosmology of idealized numbers, talked of music as being number in time and geometry as being number in space. So when we talk about sacred geometry, it's just a recognition of the sacredness of creation, of this beautiful, spiritually based, universally consciousness basis of all that we call our reality. So there is such a, and the ancient Greek geometers, who only had a sort of straight edge and something to run with and mark with, realized that, we had 5 types of 3-dimensional appearances of perfect solids called the Platonic solids, the tetrahedron, the cube, etc. And in 2 dimensions, a tetrahedron is a triangle. Now, what we realize now is that instead of the idealized shapes, where, triangles, same relationships, you can scale it up, scale it down, same relationships. We now discover through analysis of vast amounts of data, these so-called these so-named fractal patterns, which at their what's called their asymptote, their convergence, become those idealized shapes. But because clouds are fractal, river systems are fractal, the solar wind is fractal, atoms cluster their electrons fractally when they change from insulators to metals, these are not the idealized, but they are relational. They are innately relational, and they also scale up and scale down. So these are the patterns of reality. So all is sacred geometry.
To watch the full video, click on the link below, and don't forget to subscribe.